Transit Community Council, and I am excited to welcome you to tonight's Keep SA Moving Student Roundtable. Join us to learn more about the Keep SA Moving Plan, SA 2020, and stay for discussion with Move Texas's Alex Birnel and MIT students and VIA writer Maria Garcia-Garcia for a live interactive conversation about millennials, Generation Z, and transits. Again, this is a community conversation, and we would love to hear from you and your questions about VIA's plan to keep you and all of San Antonio moving. First, I'd like to introduce Alex Birnel to help kick off tonight's events.
Thank you very much, Joey. My name is Alex Birnel. I'm the advocacy manager at Move Texas, and we're all here tonight because we know that we need better transit in our cities. If young people have added any inflection to this conversation, it's an understanding that transit is not only a means of getting around, but also a key component of a just city, where a right to the city and access to its opportunities and cultural life takes pride of place. Transit is not and should not ever be framed as something we provide to lower income people. Instead, those care workers, nurses, and teachers, and those young people in those bus seats provide all of us with so much. The circulatory system of transit and the work riders do are the lifeblood of a city, and San Antonio is no different. Expansive transit in a denser city, a public luxury we should all fight to make a luxury, would relieve some of the car-based debt burden San Antonio millennials shoulder. According to Lending Tree, we shoulder the most debt of any other millennial population in the country, right here in the 210. Greater transit use should mean less cars, and some economic relief is baked right into the concept. Less cars also means less time behind the wheel, time to read that last chapter in a book you've been meaning to finish because it's due back at the public library soon. It could be more time in the morning and in the evening, not sacrificed to a carefully calibrated schedule designed around traffic and congestion expectations. That's precious time with loved ones we deserve back from staring at red tail lights. Millennials, Gen Z, and young people generally bring this frame of mind, that everything is connected to everything else, and therefore a transit system is a matter of social justice. Transit, like our planet, is part of an ecosystem. Everything is connected to everything else. Transit is climate justice, transit is economic justice, transit is social justice. The jobs are more frequently unionized, and as a public good, transit can remind us of the need to demand the universal, and not the arbitrary means testing of too much public policy design. At Move Texas, I work to build young people's power across the state, and if you've been watching the news, we're a massive block in the new electorate, more diverse than ever. Texas is currently leading the nation in youth voter turnout. We started from the bottom, and now we're here. At the same time, you've seen us on megaphones and you've seen our signs, so you know we're coming at you from every direction with these convictions, with this analysis, with this desire to build something better in our little corner of the world. This conversation about transit tonight among young people should be just the latest episode in that activity. Thanks.
All right, now we're going to have John Gary Herrera from VIA to talk about the Keep SA Moving Plan.
Well, thank you, Joey, and make sure that I am off of mute, because that is a 2020 saying this year, is you're on mute. Something that probably in January 2020 we thought we'd never hear as often as we are hearing now. But and meanwhile, I'm going to bring up the presentation so we can go through the presentation and have it there as a facilitate some conversation among the group. So thank you for this opportunity, Joey, and the group to present you our plan and present you what we have been having a conversation with the community about. So we'll start the slideshow here from the beginning. So I keep San Antonio moving plan, a plan to connect people to jobs and opportunity. And as Alex was alluding to in his opening statement here, he's absolutely right on in terms of what transit role in the community is. The transit role in the community is to connect people to opportunity. That's the role that it has In many cases, that opportunity is jobs. In many cases, that opportunity might also be grocery stores. Opportunity could also be as simple as also getting to the doctor's office, healthcare. So it has its reach into so many different areas. So what we're looking at doing with the Keep San Antonio Moving Plan is design a system that's going to improve our transit and mobility network, and that contributes to the economy and it addresses our population growth. We're going to break out each one of those here shortly. As we're talking about, as we approach the improving the system, let's understand the whys, the why we do this. And one of the major reasons why is indeed how we connect to the economy. And the number one reason folks take our service right now, this is based on our Who is the Rider survey that we did in 2019. Number one reason they take our services to connect them to their jobs, is to connect them to where they need to go for employment. Our typical rider uses VIA 5 to 7 days a week. 58% of them have no motor vehicle in the household. And of course, as you would expect, San Antonio, disproportionately Hispanic, made up of minorities in general. But it is indeed reflecting of what the San Antonio population looks like. 72% of the riders are employed. Many cannot work from home. And this is something we learned during the pandemic here, where we still were operating during the pandemic because many of our riders and customers still needed to get to their essential job. And that was critical. Their essential job at the hospital, their essential job at the grocery stores, their essential jobs where they needed to be. They can't do those from their homes. They have to be at their place and locations to do so. So we understand that it's an essential job for them, and we understand that VIA is essential for them as well. You know, the secret is out about San Antonio. I grew up here, and I'm proud to call San Antonio home. I was born and raised here. I was born down in Santa Rosa Hospital many years ago. But the growth of our San Antonio and our region is top 5 in growth nationwide. And it's I emphasize here that that's a nationwide top 5 in growth, a nationwide where we're looking at adding 1 million new residents by 2040. Imagine taking the population of Austin and moving it down to San Antonio over the next 20 years. You know, it took us, we just celebrated 300 years as a community. It took us 300 years to reach our first million. And so it's going to take us 20 years to reach the second million. That's how fast our growth is happening. But, you know, as you would expect, more growth means more people, and more people means more traffic. So let's make sure that we're designing a system that provides the mobility options for those that are moving in, but just as importantly, and as important, designing a system that allows our residents to move around and have some mobility options at their at their disposal. If we're gonna, as we're looking at improving our system, you know, we have to start with the basics, and start with the basics of understanding, you know, what is attractive about transit, and recognizing what that attraction is with transit, and then how to improve that will be one of the first things that we do with Keep San Antonio Moving. The Alamo area, the MPO, the Alamo Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, in 2018 had a survey of the local market. And in the survey, they asked a question to respondents. And of course, these are general respondents, not necessarily riders of VIA. But what would be your interest in utilizing transit as an option for transportation if that transit vehicle were to come by under 10 minutes? So from 0 to 10 minutes, you know, if a transit vehicle is going to come by under 10 minutes. As you see here, 83.80% of the respondents raised their hand and basically said, hey, you know what, I'm interested. If that transit vehicle is coming around at least every 10 minutes, I'm interested. That makes sense. When you think about your own convenience and your own options and where you need to be, having the reliability of a vehicle coming by every 10 minutes, having the reliability of also getting to where you need to go in a frequent manner is also very important. Then they asked, okay, what about if it came by every 11 to 20 minutes? Well, there was a drop off in interest there. You know, it went down to 63%, but still having more than majority of the respondents saying that they would be interested. then we see the dramatic drop from 21 to 30 minutes. The consumer is saying, I'm going to start looking at my other options. If that bus or vehicle is coming around every 21 to 30 minutes, I'll probably be looking at some other options and seeing where I need to go. 31 minutes and out to 60 minutes, you're talking about even a further dramatic drop where 5% of the respondents basically were saying, okay, I still might be interested at 30 to 40 minutes, but essentially what we're also, conversely seeing that 95% of the respondents were saying, "Hey, not interested. I'm gonna start utilizing something else, or I'll start looking at other options." So as we lay across here the design of what our system is as of today, approximately 60% of our system operates in the 21 to 30 minute area. It is indeed a result of the stretch of resources that we've been talking about as a community and having this dialogue. But it is indeed the design of where our system routes and their frequency are designed at this point right now, where it is indeed attracting those that would have no other options in many cases. Where you see the 58%, as I alluded to earlier, 58% of our riders don't have vehicles. Those are the folks that this system would be attracting. So ideally, and we've proven this already with new investments that came from the city of San Antonio, we have proven that when you get down to the 10 minutes or even under 11 or 20 minutes, we're attracting a much broader group of citizens to the system. And we continue to see that. So frequency is going to be one of the first things that we do in terms of improving our system, because first of all, it makes it more attractive, as we discussed, as well to the general population, but it also then impacts your travel time. So travel time is the second piece. How far you can travel by transit and automobile within 45 minutes, what this slide is demonstrating here. So we took an example here on the Near East Side, put the star right in the middle there, and we said, okay, from that star, how much can you access of the San Antonio market, of our region, within 45 minutes if you travel by transit? Well, that purple area here is the 45-minute reach. Of course, you can reach further out, but within 45 minutes. 45 minutes is generally where a person would like to live, work, and play. It's about 45 minutes to an hour threshold that they're talking about. So that translates into, by transit, you can access about 10% of the total employment, because 90% of the employment is outside this 45-minute radius. Conversely, when you leave and look at the medical center, which is our highest density of job opportunities in this region, by transit, you're reaching at about 20% of the total employment that's within a 45-minute travel time. So, this is where an example of travel time also starts to impact the desire and willingness to travel by transit, and in particular connecting to the economy. I use this also as an example. If we could imagine Brooks and also Port San Antonio. Brooks and Port San Antonio, let's utilize the example here on the Near East Side. As those companies that are moving into Brooks and Port San Antonio, they are going to really have to look at attracting folks that have a vehicle, or they're not really going to have access to 100% of the marketplace, because the limitations that are being driven by transit and the travel times is indeed not going to have 100% of availability for those folks that might be looking to hire in other places in the marketplace. So it's a great equalizer, as Alex was also discussing earlier today. So travel times, improving those, and then improving that also with frequency. Two kind of the basic building blocks here of transit, but we know that there's opportunity that we're going to look at improving here. What's also important in this design of what we're going to do to improve our system is, talking to not only our riders, but obviously also talking to the region And we've done this over 2 years where we've received countless numbers of comments and survey impressions and events where we're asking. And there's been a theme that has come out of those as a result. And the 4 guiding elements that you see in our long range plan is what folks are looking for is a more frequent, as we discuss, a network where the core network bus will operate with better frequency and speed, more direct, so you're not having to necessarily stop every other block, maybe a more direct route, a more simple network. I don't want to have to go downtown if I'm going to go crosstown. Those are the types of simplicities that folks have been giving us some feedback on. And then obviously a convenient network people where they need to go. That's another key part of this design. So putting all those together, we're looking at improving the system that connects more people to more places with additional options by offering more frequent and reliable transit service. We're going to really focus on innovation. We're going to expand on mobility options, and I'm going to pause for a little bit here just to kind of expand a little bit more on what we mean by that. Expand mobility options. We're going to talk to this plan in terms of more mobility on demand, and the mobility on demand would be an example of more mobility options. Mobility on demand. Think of Uber and Lyft. That's mobility on demand. That's what those services are. Yes, they're rideshare services, which, by the way, transit has been doing rideshare for 50 years, or at least here in San Antonio, 40 years. But mobility on demand, getting that rideshare service on demand system is really what Uber and Lyft are. We have that service that's currently running in San Antonio. We're going to talk a little more about that in the next couple of slides. And then investing in capital and technology. I want to emphasize here this third bullet point. While we're going to continue to move our rapid transit efforts down the path to fruition, we're also looking at universal travel app. But the federal government has a consistent program that they are willing to come in, and in some cases, or in many cases, I should say, not some, they have programs that will invest 50 cents on every dollar. If the local community is willing to spend $1 on an investment to move people in a very efficient manner, as we do with transit, the federal government says, well, you know what, we'll come along and give you 50 cents for every dollar. They will invest in that opportunity. So attracting federal dollars, we don't want to miss out on that. We have been missing out on that because it takes local money to do so. But we are looking at starting to get more of our lion's share of federal dollars coming into our system. So if we, as we're pulling the system together and we're looking at it, here's an example of what we see happening to frequencies. In 2017, where we had 23% of the routes were over 30 minutes, 40% of the routes were at least at 30 minutes. So this is, again, where the 63% of the system is only going to attract about 5% of the marketplace. We are in the future here with Keep San Antonio Moving, looking at getting rid of the 30-minute system altogether, anything above 30 minutes, and looking at really improving the 10 to 12-minute options that folks will have, and really looking at the bulk of this also coming into the 15 and 20-minute investment, starts attracting a lot more people to the system. We're also increasing system coverage by 30%, as we alluded to earlier. San Antonio is a big, wide system, and it continues to grow. And to keep up with that growth with transit services, something that we're looking at doing. So as we're focusing on faster connections and shorter travel times, we asked our planning group to give us an example of what kind of percentage of increases that San Antonians in this area would have increase. If we're going to increase frequency, or we're going to decrease travel times, which are two of the main key components of improving our service here, who's going to benefit from that? And they were able to give us a very good listing of these type of folks or populations that would benefit from it. I like to obviously jump right over here to the elderly population. The elderly population, 44% more of the elderly population will see an increased access to frequent service that runs every 15 minutes or better during peak hours. That means their travel time is going to be shorter. They're going to have faster connections. People with disability, 35%, will see an increase in that as well. So overall, 42% more San Antonians will have increased access to frequent bus and service that runs every 15 minutes. Expand mobility options. This is where it is a it is a program where VIA has really led the nation in putting together this mobility on demand system. So in the northeast area of San Antonio, we've been running mobility on demand in a 17 square mile area. It has been so successful that we are now looking at increasing that to over 300 square miles of mobility on demand. To size 300 square miles for us here as a group. The city of San Antonio's boundaries is roughly about 575 miles. So 300 square miles is nearly 60% of that. Pretty big wide area that would be covered with mobility on demand options. Mobility on demand options is not only beneficial for obviously the consumer because they are pulling up schedules and times that they need the service, but for VIA and for us, we're only deploying services that are on an as needed basis as well. So it becomes very efficient for us as well. It helps us expand that mobility. So think of this as a micro transit option. Sometimes you might see in other cities that you go and visit, rail has been an option to go and achieve some of this effort, to go reach some suburban areas of the community where a train or a light rail system would reach that. We're going to do that, but we're going to do it in a micro transit way. We're going to do this with mobility on demand. Very innovative for San Antonio. I'm very proud to work for VIA that has been on the forefront of this program, where we've even had other transit agencies come and ask us for some guidance so they could replicate this in their own systems. So our plan, the features that we'll be pulling out of this plan that we'll continue to emphasize is faster trips, more coverage, shorter travel times, more weekend service, more overnight service, more evening service. A moment here I'll spend here just to remind folks that, as San Antonio has grown and as we have gotten as bigger in both population and size, our economy has also grown. And our economy is no longer an 8 to 5 economy. Our economy is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week economy. So the workforce is looking for those kind of options in order to continue to getting those opportunities for overnight shifts, weekend shifts, and so forth. So we want to have a system that provides them those kind of options to do so. We touched upon the investment in capital and technology, advancing, talking about advanced rapid transit, preparing for advanced rapid transit, integrating planning and payment options as well, real-time information and communication systems, continue to update our navigation and planning tools. So, this is a target. Our target here is, as we're asking this plan to do a lot, but it really, at the end of the day, this plan is going to design to support the growing population, connect more people to jobs and opportunity, and as I alluded to earlier, employers to a larger workforce, support workforce training, improve the quality of transit, reach of speed and reduce travel times, maintain opportunities for the vulnerable population, including the elderly and people with disabilities, and that all important continue, to secure more federal funding coming into San Antonio. So the funding and ballot questions, as we are in the middle of our Advanced Transportation Board called for an election where we are talking about 1/8 of a penny and being considered for on the ballot as we speak. We're almost going to end early voting here with election day next Tuesday. But this slide will give you a little deeper dive into how our sales tax here in San Antonio breaks out. Our sales tax overall is 8.25% on sales. 6.25% of that goes to the state of Texas. 1% goes to the city of San Antonio for their general fund, and 1% other The legislature in 1977 authorized that 1% of other could be dedicated to transit and metropolitan transit authorities. This is where, and we're going to show this in the next slide. This is where the other big systems in Texas, in Houston, Austin, and Dallas, they all went to the full 1 cent. San Antonio did not. San Antonio did not take that 1 cent. We did half of that here at that time. We have since added to the 1 cent with an advanced transportation district, and this is the portion that you see here on the penny of ATD via revenue. So we get about 1/8 of that from an ATD revenue. That election was in 2004. Pre-K for SA is currently on the ballot for this piece of the 1/8 that's remaining. And then this green part here is what currently is being considered for both workforce and for via / advanced transportation district. This slide gives a comparison on, as we talked about, what other communities in Texas are utilizing, with that 1 cent that was indeed available for transit, and when they went and took what that 1 cent meant. This puts it into a funding comparison of what that means here across Texas. As you can see, the 2018 local tax funding comparison, Houston Metro at the top of that, that 1 penny generates $758 million annually. Now, keep in mind too that Dallas and Houston have a bigger economy than San Antonio, but the penny will go a lot further in those two economies. But not getting the full penny in San Antonio has really put us in that position of really looking at equalizing and getting that level playing field, as Alex had suggested. You break that out by per capita and population, you see also how that works out for the funding mechanism. The per square mile, because of, as I alluded to, San Antonio is a large system and it's a large population. We're dead last in terms of the amount of investment that we do per square mile here in San Antonio as a result of the 5 cent sales tax. The funding timeline for that 1/8 cent, that green slice, that piece of pie that we referenced earlier. If voters approve here next Tuesday, there's a utilization of 4 years for that 1/8 cent sales tax for workforce development. That would be dedicated to workforce for the first 4 years. And then on January 1st, 2026, it would come over to the Advanced Transportation District, which is run by via Metropolitan Transit. The ballot and what the ballot looks like in Proposition A, Advanced Transportation District, previously created with voter approval by via Metropolitan Transit Authority. Of course, the key dates, and looking at reminding everybody, early voting ends on the 30th, and election day is next Tuesday. With that is the end of the presentation, and we always open it up for questions, answers, or questions or comments, and if there's any clarifications that we can provide at this time.
Thank you so much, John Gary. We appreciate that.
Oh, you bet, Joey. Glad to be able to do it.
All right. Alex, I guess first, before we move on to our next part, would you have any comments, or I guess, what is the consensus among a lot of the younger generation about something like the Keep SA Moving plan? And where's it going?
Sure. So the elements of this plan, in reading about it and being presented it, and I really appreciate that overview, John Gary. And I think the most intriguing aspects of it for folks in my age group that are looking out at transit systems across the country and really desiring to see improvements here locally, or the ways in which this sort of plan sets us up, puts us in a better position to attract federal investment. I sort of see this as transitional. And I think a lot of the other systems that you see around the country, some of the initiatives that those transit systems are able to enact, things like, whether or not folks are paying the fee when riding, right? Fare free transit. That those kinds of things are really possible when the whole system is in a better financial position. And I know that sharing that cost burden with a federal actor makes things like that possible. And so just thinking about some of the social justice elements when we talked about in my introduction, trying to move the system towards universal aspect that the universal aspect that moving it towards things like fair food is really part of that perspective. And so the aspects of this that are about like making us more attractive to federal grants and things like that are the most fascinating to me. I definitely think that some of the basic nuts and bolts of the transit system, increasing ride frequency and bus frequency is obviously key to adoption of the service by a lot of folks, as the graph showed. So I think if we can both knock out some of the costs that riders are using and really make an argument that transit is key for environmental reasons, that it has potential to be a universal good, and it has potential to be a practical good too. If we can continue to make strides in decreasing wait times, I think we're heading in the direction that we need to be on all three fronts to make this system attractive to young folks. But I definitely find most resonant those aspects of the plan that sort of bite into some of the social justice conversation that I opened the conversation up with.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that too. And I guess talking about affordability and fair access, John Gary, what type of programs does VIA offer already for students or young people? Namely, I guess, bus pass programs.
Absolutely, great question. And in particular, there's a number of programs that we have that are available for discount opportunities on our fare. So let me say our general fare. Our general fare is $1.30 one way. $2.60 you basically ride for the entire day. And we have discounts even on those $1.30s. We have a university pass. I know Priscilla is on our call here, and I'm going to ask her to come and talk a little bit more about the UPass program that we have at local colleges and universities. But colleges and universities have recognized the importance of transportation options for their students that are also trying to stretch their dollars and trying to stretch their abilities to continue to get to where they need to go. Not only to their campuses, because right now they're not going to campus because of online learning, but that doesn't mean that's the only place that the student ever travels. And that's where these programs have come together and really have shored up a great partnership with us and the local colleges and universities. Priscilla, did you have anything that you'd like to add about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for your interest in me and coming together to talk about this very important subject. But about 2.5 years ago, VIA introduced what's called a UPass. And we approached the area colleges to ask them to be part of this project. How it works is that the university or the college pays for every student to be able to have access to public transportation. And one of the reasons we did this was because we were hearing stories about how area students weren't able sometimes to get to school, and transportation was a barrier in them being able to continue to study and to get their college degree. And so the board approved the UPass program. We've got several campuses that are already part of this important fare program that we offer: UTSA, ACCD campuses, Our Lady of the Lake, and the University of Incarnate Word. We also have a private technical school, CODA, who also approached us when they heard about the program. They wanted to make it available to their students as well. And so we brought them into the program to also participate. So the student really has the benefit of if they are attending one of these campuses, they have access to the UPass program. And how it works is that you can have the pass downloaded onto your phone through an app that we provide the university students. Initially, when ACCD got on board, they opted for having their students just show their ID. So when they show their ID, they board the bus and ride as a student. Now they're also using the mobile app as well. And really what it does for the student is that it gives them a full circle of being connected to transportation. It's not only allows them to get to school, but if they've got internships, they have work outside of school, they're able to use the bus. The pass is good on any of the routes that we offer or are in operation at the time that the student needs to take the trip. So if you go to any of these campuses, you've got access to the service, and we really encourage you to take advantage of it. If you've never ridden the bus before, you've got access to the UPass, please, we encourage you to give it a try. You can call us at 362-2020 or log on to our website for our trip planning features and give the service a try.
Thank you, Priscilla. That's really insightful. And I'll have to say real quick, as a current UTSA student working on my graduate degree, having the digital UPass, it's extremely easy to use, and it's fun to show friends and family how easy it is to use as well, to go, for my case, to work or school, or going anywhere around town. So that ease of use makes it incredibly great.
I was going to add, Joey, even last year, the students were using it to ride the bus to the football games, right, as well. So they were taking advantage of extracurricular activities, but taking it downtown to go and watch their UTSA Roadrunners, in the Alamo Dome.
And one thing I would like to do is to really thank the universities and campuses that are using this program. They saw when we presented the idea, they saw the need that was there, and they took full advantage of it. And the ones who they've started with the program, the campuses that I mentioned, they've continued with it because they understand how important it is for their students. And now some of the campuses also include their faculty and staff that they also take advantage of the UPass program.
It's incredible, making it easier for everybody to get around.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to go to, in just a second, we're going to go hear some more about SA 2020 as well. Before that, Maria, so I know that you're a student right now, and I'm curious to learn how you're using VIA, or how easy are some of the tools that VIA has, like the digital bus passes, or how you use VIA to get around town. You're still on mute right now.
Is that question directed to me?
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, it kind of cut out, so I wasn't sure. So yeah, VIA has been really convenient, like for me, like not just as a student, but just in general, since I was like little with my parents and like getting around town, going to the hospital, going to the store, and just anywhere we needed to be. Like that was always our option for transportation, and it was the most reliable and the most cost effective, because like other forms of transportation, like taxis at the time, they're really expensive. You just want to go like to 15 minutes away, like it costs a lot, so it's just easier to ride the bus. And they offer so many different options for like passes and transfers. So if you only need a one-way trip, like you can just pay that cost and that's all. But if you need to ride the bus like all day, or if you need to ride it for a whole month, like depending how you use the system, like there's other options that make the cost a lot more affordable. So there's the monthly pass for adults, the half fare pass for students, which they can show their ID, their school ID, and that would work for them too. And like earlier, they were talking about the UPass for university students. They also have a semester pass for high school, middle school, and elementary students, so that they can just get a paper signed at school that they are a current student, and they can receive a pass that they can use for the whole fall semester and then again in the spring semester, so that the whole year they don't have to worry about how they're going to get to school. Because I know for students that's especially when you're trying to go to schools outside of like your neighborhood. It's very hard to get around, and that helps a lot, like having that system that you can rely on. Um, and I do feel like the things that you have mentioned about the times, the frequencies increasing are something we should look forward to, because I remember originally like having to plan my trips to be at least 30 minutes ahead of wherever I needed to arrive, because some bus routes are slower than others. Depending on which one I took, one would take up to 2 hours while another one could take 30 minutes. And it just, that whole improvement system that everyone is working on currently would be very beneficial to not only students but like everyone who uses the bus system currently.
It's tremendous to hear, especially again how VIA is a very reliable source for, I mean, individuals like yourself. I mean, from, as you said, for your experiences growing up, and so even now, and how it is very affordable. Because I can attest to getting around, for instance, going downtown or something, taking the bus as compared to even taking a taxi or Uber or something. It's so much more affordable, and makes a big difference for a lot of us. So thanks for that perspective. And John Gary, we're going to say something.
I was going to add to this. We get a lot of data related to not only the San Antonio marketplace, but kind of national trends as well. And it's clear there's a trend with the younger generation that's not as interested in car ownership as other generations before them are, and that's another example of where they're more interested in mobility as a service, not as a financial obligation. And a vehicle, for example, is a financial obligation. And the younger generation is saying, I'm not interested in owning the asset, but I'm interested in utilizing the service that asset delivers, right? The connection of transportation. And we're seeing that some of our biggest champions, for better service and more transit is indeed that younger generation are recognizing that they like to have this option because it is very affordable. The second piece that this rolls into as well is as students and as younger generations that are starting off maybe in the workforce, they may be taking a job that might be paying them at a lower scale. But if you have to own that asset again, that vehicle, if you got to own that vehicle in order to achieve that job, vehicle ownership is going to take cost off your paycheck, right? It's going to cost, and it's going to impact that. So on average, it's estimated that vehicle ownership in San Antonio is about $10,000 a year when you include gas and upkeep and maintenance on top of the overall program of just owning the asset, owning that vehicle. So if it's $10,000 and you got a $20,000 a year job, you're already starting off at a $10,000 job. And then you have to, you got mortgage, you got rent, you got other things that you're going to be doing as well. So it is that important aspect that transit delivers to a community, is that affordability. And we've talked a little bit about that. And I know it's a big aspect for the young generation.
Yeah, Joey, and if I could, I know we want to get to other speakers. I just want to add one comment to that, and that is, I referenced in the intro a study done by Lending Tree that looks at millennial populations around the country. And if you take a look at a study they did 2 years ago, San Antonio millennials, out of any other millennial population, had the biggest debt burden of any in the country. And that debt burden is represented by two sources. The first is auto loan debt. So exactly the circumstances that John Gary's speaking to with the maintenance of a car, the ownership of a car, and then second is student loan debt. And so there's actual empirical data for those interested in looking at the economic situation that San Antonio's young people in particular are under, and how transit fits into the conversation because of that.
Thanks, Alex and John Gary. Those are tremendous points, especially talk again about the affordability and how much it is to own a car and how much it can put us in debt. And of course, VIA is a great solution to that. All right, so next, I do want to go to Audrey from SA 2020 to talk about how VIA fits into SA 2020 and what they're talking about.
Yeah, hi friends. Thank you for having me. Gonna go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. So yeah, I'm Audrey. I'm the Community Impact Assistant at SA 2020, and I'm also a second-year college student at Trinity. SA 2020 is a nonprofit that drives progress towards San Antonio's community vision. The original community vision was written in 2010 about what San Antonians wanted San Antonio to look like in 10 years. About 6,000 individuals participated in the original process, and here we are 10 years later, working to reaffirm and strengthen the community vision to carry us forward for the next 10 years, setting the precedent that every 10 years we will envision the future together. So far this year, we have engaged about 11,825 people as of yesterday, which is almost double the original engagement process. And this would not have been possible without our content experts. So these are folks with personal and lived experiences related to the community results, and then our ambassadors and multi-sector partners. Our engagement included in-person events at the start of the year, and since the COVID-19 crisis, we've been relying on our ambassadors and multi-sector partner organizations to help us continue the engagement. At sa2020.org/community-engagement, we are transparently reporting on who is participating and what we are hearing as priorities for San Antonians. So at the first half of the year, we had our first survey, and across demographics such as race, gender, age, and city council districts, folks were identifying mobility as a thing they wanted to see improved and changed. So like, as we're hearing this conversation about young people want better mobility, like this is true for what we're seeing as well. And mobility includes micromobility, public transportation, mass transit, and transportation. And then in our second survey, which was through the summer, 34% of respondents chose transportation as the community result most important to them. Since respondents were allowed to choose more than one result, transportation was most frequently selected with one or more other areas, and most frequently linked to neighborhoods, education, and economic competitiveness. And as y'all were discussing before, we know this makes sense because people of course you need transportation to get to your job and to school and home and to your daily activities and the football game. And then the third survey, which is currently ongoing, about 10% of responses are choosing transportation, walkability, micromobility, public transit, and commute time as a cluster of words they are most passionate and curious about. To give you a sense of the distribution, education is the top choice with about 15% of responses. So the proposed community result to carry us through the next 10 years for transportation reads, San Antonio is served by a multimodal transportation system that connects everyone who walks, rides, drives, or wheels to their desired destinations in a safe, convenient, reliable, and affordable manner. At sa2020.org/input, you can let us know if this captures the future you want to see and if you have any additional edits. We also believe it is important to track our progress, which we do through indicators. These are the proposed indicators on the first half of the slide, which you can additionally provide feedback on to let us know what might be missing or what is most important to you. Right now, the three indicators rising to the top for respondents as the most important are increasing alternative transit use, improving walkability, and increasing the percentage of population with transit choice. A community vision is not just important for what it says, but what it leads us to accomplish. These are just a few of the big, bold efforts that were brought out of the community vision and what San Antonians said they wanted for this city. Through this last year's community engagement efforts, we know San Antonians are eager for a transportation system that connects everyone in a safe, convenient, reliable, and affordable manner. Please help us reaffirm and strengthen San Antonio's shared community vision by going to sa2020.org/input. And thank you to our friends at VIA for having us, and shout out to the wonderful panelists, Alex and Maria.
Thanks so much, Audrey, for really capping off how better transportation options are really desired in our community. And Alex, I guess I want to go to you real quick. Since Audrey talking about how that is a heavily desired option, and Alex, what I mean in your world, I know you talked about this some earlier, but how are people going to the polls in droves? What are they talking to you about some of those options? Are people talking to you about the problems they're having, or like in getting around, and how is that connecting the dots there?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Joey. So yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to other young people as a young person, and a lot of them are going to the polls right now. We, have been putting in a lot of work at Move Texas to build a civic culture. We are obviously dealing with voter suppression in this state, but we're also dealing with an attitude problem about people's voices feeling like they don't matter. And we do a lot of work to connect folks to local politics where they can see the down ballot impact in their daily lives. Organize with them, talk with them about issues. And in those conversations, we really see some of the brilliant insights that young people have. And some of the framing I did in the introduction, I really wanted to speak to the interconnectedness of these issues. So, when I talk to young people, they don't view the transit system over here, their job over there, the climate over here. They view it as all one big picture of a vision for a city, a vision for the country, and they really use a social justice frame of reference when talking about it all. So, I hear about how transit is not only a means to get around, but also an eminent climate justice issue, because everybody understands that every additional car on the road means more emissions in the air, and that every car on the road increases demand for highway expansion. And no matter how many highways we build, it doesn't seem to alleviate the congestion. And so we know that diminishing the amount of cars by improving the transit system, making it more attractive, is one means by which we can get some of our time and our day back, not sitting behind the wheel either in the morning or in the evening. And at the same time, we can reduce emissions because of it. And we also understand that density is something that a transit system helps create. And we know that density and sprawl is one of these questions when it comes to economic justice and climate, where the most unaffordable living is oftentimes in the inner city, but that's where most of the jobs are located. So there's this issue of the resources that people want to live good, public and luxurious lives are concentrated in the most expensive places. And so transit is a key piece of this puzzle. And when I talk to young voters, they can run through the same bullet points that I can. And so we're bringing all this to bear on our choices for candidates at the ballot box. We're looking at propositions with that same lens. And so, my recommendation would be to anybody who is in management of these services to have vision, try to connect these issues to social justice, not in a way that's vague, but in a way that's concrete. Because I do think that, if you zoom out from any one issue, you sort of see its interconnectedness. And, that's why I made reference before to, the most fascinating aspects of this plan to me are the facilitative ones that, will be more attractive for federal grants, and that makes certain things for the transit system possible, maybe fare free transit arrangements, things like that. I definitely appreciate that VIA is affordable, but, moving from a fare-based system, even if the fare is really small, to a no fare system creates a different mindset in riders where, even if you forget the pocket change or your debit card, you can still get on the bus. And so, it just decreases the amount of things you got to have in your pocket when you're walking around town. So, that's just some of the things that I hear from young voters when I talk to them. And I'm so glad that so many of them are bringing that passion to the ballot box in Texas and breaking records. Very, very proud of that.
Great. Thanks, Alex, for that entire wrap up right there. And we're getting close to our time limit here, but I do want to ask one more question to Maria and even Audrey. And also after this question, give a couple last final thoughts. But I know one thing for me is I try to consider transit or transit access when I move to a different location. Is that something that y'all are thinking about too? Is that something that is happening in our generation where we're trying to think about where we can live closer to transits, options, you know, good transit line, good access to bike facilities, et cetera. But is that something you're thinking about? And if you can just give one final thought as we're closer to our time frame here, and then I'll ask on Gary to wrap us up here. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something I would be thinking about, especially as a college student, since no matter what college you go to throughout the nation, like you usually don't get around like by having a car. Most students don't have cars. We figure out what the public transport is in the area and then become whizzes at it and just like get around to wherever we need to go, whether that be to a doctor's appointment, to an internship, to buy groceries, or just to like check out the local attractions. Like you're always looking for like what are my options? Is there a train? Is there a bus? How often is it? What do I need? Do I need repair? Can I use my student ID? And then like, is there a map I can look at? Where are the locations where I can transfer from one route to another? Like that's something I always look forward to. So definitely even later after college, like it would be really convenient to just look at like wherever you're living, like are there public transport routes that you can use to get to your job, to a local supermarket, so that you're not always relying on a car, because sometimes especially when you're new to the workforce, like you don't even have the option of getting a car yet because you don't have the assets to buy it. So you're like, what can I do with what I have?
Definitely. Good points about even using transit to get groceries and going to the store, because it's possible. We can do that. Audrey, you want to go ahead and give a couple more comments?
Yeah, I guess when it came to choosing a college, I looked at my transportation options. One of the schools that I almost chose, they had like one of the best, they were boasting the best public transit system, you know, in the nation. But I believe in San Antonio so much, and I believe in VIA, and I knew that I wanted to stay here in San Antonio and continue doing the work here, so.
Great. And I guess before you go, John, Gary, Alex, did you want to have any other last thoughts here?
I would just say keep up the energy. If I'm speaking to fellow young people, you know, we're at the forefront of critical conversations about the climate. We're at the forefront of critical conversations about economic inequality, housing, transit. We are leading the way, and it's important that we speak up, both through protest, through the streets, but also through the ballot box. And I'm happy to see that, you know, the energy of this generation is the energy we need to solve a lot of these convergent problems. And I think we have, you know, the analysis and the framework to connect them all. So I'm just inspired to be in great company and walk alongside fellow young people in Texas. And the numbers we're seeing are proving that I think we're finally ready to meet the moment. So keep voting. Tomorrow's the last day of early voting, and then we've got election day next week. And as of today, we've already surpassed the total number of ballots cast in 2016, with still 2 days of voting to go. And voting day itself going to be probably the largest share of folks voting. So just really proud to be part of something historic, because young people are a huge share of that.
Thanks, Alex. John, Gary.
Yo, Joey, thank you.
About,
yeah, you know, I mean, I'll say I'm inspired. I'm inspired by the younger generation. You know, your passion and your willingness to get involved is incredible. And so my hat's off to this younger generation, and seeing the leaders that are evolving, you know, quickly out of the younger generation. You know, I'll end this on a comment about your VIA, right, and your transit agency here. I'm proud to work for a transit agency that wants to be better and recognizes that there's opportunity to be better because it's the right thing for the community. Last year, pre-pandemic, we took 36.6 million passenger trips in 1 year. You know, you can imagine that keeps us busy as it is, you know, doing 36.6 million passenger trips. But we know that's not enough. we wanting to do more, we wanting to improve more, and you know, we hopefully are on the right steps to do that. So thanks again for this opportunity, and thank you all for the conversation.
For sure. And before we close too, I have to say, if people haven't given VIA a shot, it's a lot easier than we would think, especially as many millennials, we can hop on Google and put in our destination, and Google will easily tell us how to get there using transits. And I think that's one thing for people to consider, is that it is a lot easier than expected. And using the VIA app to purchase a fare or paying cash if needed, it is a lot easier. And John Gary,
and
go ahead.
Our buses talk to Google as well. So our buses have a GPS, locator that's communicating every 30 seconds on where it is. So it's going to give those systems like Google Maps and Apple Maps and others that also have that capability of reading that type of data, to bring that data into the maps as well.
Definitely. So we can give VIA a shot to get to the polls. You use Google?
Yeah, actually on election day, this has been a practice of VIA's now for a number of years. On election day, if you board our bus and show them your voter registration card, you ride for free to help you get to your place to vote. So we offer free fare on voter on election day.
I think that's a great closing mark right there. And I wish we could have got some of the questions in the Facebook comment box, but I think some of the VIA staff was helping answer some of those questions. Hopefully next time we can have a longer conversation. But yeah, I want to thank you all for participating tonight. And I think we had a great conversation about why VIA is important to our community, and talking about VIA's plan to keep SA moving. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Joey.
Everybody have a good night.